Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to the Falcoholic Lives patron Q&A for the month of October. Apologies for making this like the last week of October, but we did get it in. It is happening. Appreciate everyone's patience with this, but we had to make sure to get you some banger guests. And of course, as always, we've delivered the man himself. He is Dave Choate at the Falcoholic himself. Dave, how are we doing tonight?
I am still recovering from yesterday's loss, but I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I like that. The hat, of course, is terrific. I also like the Beer City Bung Hammers. That's pretty
Yes, sir.
that's pretty terrific as well. So really A plus attire from Dave. I need to see what Adnan is wearing because Adnan's here too. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. I also had to break out the hat and just along with Dave. So,
Absolutely.
in honor of him, we are both wearing hats and wearing my Atlanta Hawks hat, even coming off a loss yesterday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a rough day yesterday overall.
Yeah.
Going
Yeah, we
loss.
were talking about it before the show that our fantasy teams are all struggling this week. We also saw the Falcons lose their first blowout of the year, and it really wasn't even. I think like it was a very bizarre game, just all, like overall. Uh, and we've had to deal with, of course, fantasy heads calling for Arthur Smith to be fired because Kyle Pitts isn't getting them points in fantasy. Uh, which is also really funny. We've had
I
the
saw that one like last week. He's like, "Oh, Falcons fans, would you rather be 7-10 or like 2-15 with like
but Kyle
young
Pitts gets points,
quarterbacks?" Yeah, like fuck the Falcons. Who cares?
I think it's insane that like I know I get wanting like the best pick, but like I want to. These are 17 Sundays or
Yes.
more, depending on how
Yes.
things go. Where I don't want to be miserable, man. Like this is something I'm supposed to enjoy.
Yes. Like save the like tank talk for week 14 and later when it's like
Yeah,
okay, like we're out of it. Like now we can talk about the draft. So, like save it for that. Let's not,
Don't get
let
me wrong. If we were 0-5 like we were in what 2019 was it? Then I'd be all aboard. I'd be like, all right, like let's gear up for the top pick. Let's do what we need to. Let's play the young guys. But this team doesn't deserve for us to be calling for them to tank just because they've looked good overall. Like, sure, yesterday was awful, but before yesterday, they had a legitimate chance of winning every single one of those games. And I mean, honestly, this has been the most fun team that like we've covered at the very least since I've been here at the Falcoholic, which started in 2018, which all those years have been terrible for the most
yeah.
part. But this has easily been the most fun team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it has been fun. I mean, like this was an exception this week. I mean, and even that, like going into halftime, there was significant hope that they were going to be able to make something happen here. Maybe not win, but at least keep it entertaining. And they failed to do so. We talked about that on the post game show that it's they basically had an opportunity two drives after halftime to cut this to a 4 point game, and they went three and out both times, and then Cincinnati scored again, and that was the end of it. But just overall failure of execution by the team. But that's not why we're here to talk today. We're here to answer your guys' questions, which of course may be about the game or anything else that strikes your fancy. I know we have quite a few from the Discord. We have quite a few from Patreon. And those of you watching, welcome. Throw any questions you have in the chat, and we will get to as many as we can on this show. The first one I will take here to kick us off is from Torin Bix on Discord. I forget everyone's like Patreon name or whatever or YouTube name, so I apologize. But he asks, how can we realistically replenish our cornerback room now after all of the injuries? I am really scared, and understandably so, because we did get an update on the injuries today. AJ Terrell is considered week to week, which means he's not playing this week. D. Alford is day to day, so he could play this week potentially. And Jalen Hawkins has already been declared out with a concussion. We'll obviously have to hope that those are shorter term injuries. But for now, the Falcons are going to be down at least two more defensive backs, I would think, going into Sunday. So it is a big a big thing to talk about. Like, what do they do at corner? And we also saw Mike Ford leave the game last week. So, yeah, I mean, I'll open the floor. I'll let Dave, as our guest of honor tonight, take the first crack at this. What are your sort of thoughts on how to patch up those holes in the cornerback room, Dave?
Yeah, assuming you're getting Alford back, I think we're seeing a clue already. The Falcons released Jordan Brailford off their practice squad earlier today, per and now for Aaron Wilson. Yes, yeah. So I think that's a sign that they're probably going to pick up a guy, add him to the practice squad, and plan on calling somebody up. I think if Alford is back, you'll see them bring up the mystery corner that we don't know who it is yet, and Cornell Armstrong again, because I thought obviously Armstrong got roasted, but he also made a couple of nice plays, which was much more than you'd expect for a guy like, summoned off the practice squad and pushed into a starting role by injury. So I imagine it's not very satisfying. There's no like big trade, I don't think, on the way or anything like that, even with Hayward out. I think this team would like to see what Darren Hall and D. Alford can do with extended playing time. So unless Alford is going to miss this game as well, which I think really puts them in a pretty serious bind, I imagine that's what you'll see is as a practice squad signing, that guy and Armstrong both flex to the roster against Carolina, and a little bit of a prayer. If they go into the Chargers game with the same batch of injuries, I think they probably have to add somebody else, or Justin Herbert is going to kill them. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's been interesting to see, like, they get the cornerback injuries all at once, and then against maybe the worst possible team to have those injuries against. Certainly you had to be kind of disappointed with Isaiah Oliver's performance in that one. He got pretty much worked by Tyler Boyd to the point where Tyler Boyd had his best game ever of his career. And Cornell Armstrong, it's like, I don't even like feel like he deserves like to be roasted at all, because it's like this guy comes off the practice squad and you're asking him to cover Jamar Chase like every single play. That's not ever a situation that's going to be great. And like, he did actually like defend a few passes, so good for him. But really tough, really tough there. Adnan, what do you think? Are you thinking about, like Dave, like, sort of go through the practice squad? Are you feeling aggressive, to go get another corner somewhere else? What are you feeling with the quarterback room?
I feel like if these injuries were longer term, then I think you sort of have to be aggressive. Like, this is gonna be very patchworky moving forward, and I think that they will go the route of the practice squad and keeping things internal, and that's what the practice squad is there for, to cover some of these holes. On the short term, 1 week, 2 weeks. Hopefully, AJ Terrell is back as soon as possible. Week to week always tells me it's a multi-week injury. So day to day missing a week, like that's common. Week to week tells me that Terrell probably won't be back next week either, and he may be in danger of missing that second Carolina game as well, because that's on a Thursday.
Yeah.
But right now, like Dave said, kind of have to have a prayer out here, more so than just a small one, because the cornerbacks looked really bad yesterday, but part of that is because they were facing one of the most prolific passing attacks in football. The Panthers aren't that, so I think you can sort of get away with it a little bit more, of having some of these patchwork guys against the Panthers, against their third string quarterback, and against their receiving core, which, no disrespect to them, but DJ Moore isn't exactly Jamar Chase out there. Tommy Tremble isn't as dangerous and imposing as T. Higgins, or even as imposing as Hayden Hurst, who was giving us the business yesterday. But yeah, so I think right now you stick with your guys. You hope that AJ Terrell responds well to treatment. It's always tricky and iffy dealing with a hamstring. He obviously aggravated it yesterday. It can easily be aggravated.
Yeah.
So you don't want to rush him back too quickly. But right now you just have to go out there and hope your front seven can sort of give them, the help that they need, and sort of hope that these guys who have been elevated from the practice squad, they now have their chance, and you know go out there and make the most of your chance, especially against a team that doesn't have a great passing attack. Armstrong looked terrible yesterday, but he looked terrible against maybe a top 5 wide receiver in the league, so you can't really blame him for that. Um, so yeah, if it was up to me, I would want them to possibly go assess the trade market maybe. I think Greedy Williams is available from Cleveland, but I understand why they wouldn't wanna, blow through any draft picks to make any in-season trades right now.
Yeah, yeah, it's sort of like you like the idea of going for like a Greedy Williams or like making a trade, because I think there's this thought that like, oh, the Falcons are competitive for the playoffs, like we should try to push for the playoffs. And like it's true that like they actually are competitive for the playoffs. I mean, they're tied for first in the division, but
Division is
like
right there. Tampa looks
right.
terrible.
I mean, if the Panthers beat the Falcons this week and the Bucks lose again, then the Panthers will be first in the division. So like the division being bad is like, it's anybody's division at this point. But it's also like we all know that the Falcons are sort of a year ahead of schedule, and I think trading away assets to go try to maximize this year is probably not very wise. I just don't really think it's a great plan to trade away picks. And it would be one thing if Greedy Williams was like, you have multiple years of rookie contract control and stuff like that, but no, like he's a 1-year rental only. He's going to hit free agency next year. His rookie contract is expiring. So that's not someone I would make a trade for. I think you sort of just scour looking for a veteran replacement. I know folks have mentioned like AJ Bouye, who of course, UCF great. I would be a fan of that signing. There's a lot of
I think he's a Georgia. I think he went to high school here in
yeah,
Georgia.
yeah. So, that's someone I would be interested in signing. But they do already have 3 corners on the practice squad. We saw Cornell Armstrong come up. They also have Dylan Mabin, who I think was somewhat recently added. And they also have Matt Hankins, who's the undrafted free agent guy. So, like, I don't know if they really want any of those guys starting, but they do have some guys there who could potentially be elevated. I believe you can elevate 2 guys per week. So they do have some options. At safety, the depth, they still have Dean Marlowe and Eric Harris. So even with Jalen Hawkins out, what hopefully will just be a week, they don't necessarily need to add another safety there, but I think at least we'll see 1 to 2 players elevated and possibly someone signed to the roster, because I believe the Falcons roster is still at 52. So they don't even have to cut anyone to sign a player to the roster. So
I also think that
yeah.
the way that Terry Fontenot, everything that he's done, he's been very conservative and very, we're aiming to make our big moves in the coming off season. And yeah, I don't think he'd be too eager right now to make any trades that kind of take away anything from the future moving forward, in exchange for the short term benefit. Even though it is very tempting right now to make a short term move with the division right there, with Tampa looking so bad. But you just hope that everyone will be okay for the stretch run. You should have Hayward back. You should have Terrell back in the coming weeks. But yeah, everything that Fontenot has done kind of indicates that no, the Falcons won't use any draft picks to strengthen the team right now at any position.
Yeah, they need all those draft picks for Lamar Jackson. So, yeah.
You're saying that. I feel like the more time that goes along, the higher that percentage. I think right now it's
I'm
at like
not joking. Okay,
10.
no, this is serious.
All I know is the way the franchise tag works, they can tag him twice. If they can tag him for 2 seasons, and after that, I don't think they'll be able to afford the tag anymore. So Lamar has a lot of leverage right now.
Yes. No, we're just speculating about that. There's no like buzz there or anything. But I think if he does hit the trade block, Atlanta will be like a very hot name for him to come here because of just how perfectly he fits the scheme and stuff like that. But
just know, guys, if the Falcons do not trade for Lamar Jackson, it's because Dave told them that they shouldn't.
yes, because
I did not tell them.
because Marcus Mariota is the future and can do no wrong. So
yeah, Dave's a big Marcus Mariota guy. He's been advocating. Dave's the reason why Ritter still isn't starting.
Don't you put that evil on me. Don't you put that evil on me.
I'm going home.
Yeah.
Packing up my bags, taking my ball, I'm going home.
Yeah. The only thing standing in between Ritter and starting is Dave has that kind of power.
Like, he has that kind of pull with the team. Yeah, he's like, I really need that Mariota engagement. Can you guys keep him out there for a few more weeks?
If I had that kind of pull, you'd be seeing Clowney and Justin Houston on this defense this year.
Yeah,
or you would have at any point in the last decade. So
yeah, that's true.
Fortunately, that should prove that.
Yeah, we should know. We should have known from there. But all right, next question from Dustin Black. What's up, man? He says, Panthers defense. I think they looked pretty good against a admittedly reeling Bucs team. Are they as good as they looked last week or not? I do think the Panthers defense is good. I don't think the Panthers defense has been a problem, like, really ever. I mean, I think they got kind of pooped on by the 49ers, but, that happens sometimes. Like, the 49ers, everyone's...
Not to the Falcons.
Yeah, except against the Falcons, exactly. But, I don't really think their defense has really been the issue. I think, like, it's been solid. Like, I think they're, like, 17th, so they're about average overall, and I think they've been, pretty solid. I would say that their run defense, it looks good in terms of the stats, but if you look closely, it's sort of a lot less impressive. They don't get run on very often, which is odd to me. I think they face like the 27th fewest attempts or something like that. But they do allow a lot of yardage. I think they're 22nd in rushing yards allowed, so that you can run on them. But they played the Bucs, who are maybe the like worst rushing team in the league, and then they got the Saints that week. That the Saints were really particularly bad. With the Panthers, it's going to be like, can they do anything on offense whatsoever? And like they certainly did against the Bucs, who just repeatedly like crushed themselves over and over again. But otherwise, like the Panthers have gotten over 300 yards one other game, and it was actually against the 49ers in garbage time. So, their defense is good. It's really more about their offense, though. Like, I don't think the Falcons are going to be putting up like 30 points on Carolina. That's just not really what happens with them. It's more like, can the Falcons do anything to like stop their offense, which has been awful, and is now, by the way, 2 of their top 3 receiving threats are no longer with the team. So Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson were 2 of their top 3 receivers. The only one that's still there is DJ Moore.
Also, in fairness, like they only gave up 3 points to the Bucs, but I feel like that game would have been completely different if Mike Evans didn't drop what was maybe the easiest catch of his career, easiest long catch of his career, that 75-yard touchdown, where he was just all alone, and I have no idea how he didn't bring that in, but took his eye off the ball. That's an immediate 75-yard touchdown on the first play. I know this isn't how it works, but if you add that to Brady's stat line, he has over 360 passing yards. The Panthers give up almost 400 yards, and I don't know. I feel like the tone, the way that game would have gone would have completely shifted if he made that play. But yeah, their defense is good. I don't think it's as good overall as what we saw yesterday. Like, I don't think that it's good enough to pitch like 3-point near shutouts against most teams. That was just Tampa shooting themselves in the foot yesterday.
Yeah. So I think it's good. I don't think it's like great or a defense you really fear, but I do think it's good enough to cause
Brian Burns is a beast. Like, Brian Burns is really good.
Yeah, they have a lot of good pieces there. So it is a good defense. I just don't think it's terribly like scary, but it is certainly good and it is capable of limiting scoring. So,
Yeah.
but again, yeah.
Also, they'll never do it, but J.C. Horn is a guy I would trade picks for right now. J.C. Horn is really good, and
Yeah.
I would love for him and A.J. Terrell to be patrolling Atlanta secondary. That would be very fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep it moving here. We got a question from Nico, also about the cornerbacks. What happens if Darren Hall gets injured? Right now, we have the depth of a paddling pool. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like based on what's currently on the roster. I don't know about you guys. I was surprised that it wasn't Mike Ford that played first. Like they put Cornell Armstrong right in there. Mike Ford like didn't even get an opportunity. I was pretty surprised that Armstrong went in ahead of Ford, personally. But so it seems like right now, like if they were to lose an outside corner, it's corner I mean, I don't know. I guess Cornell Armstrong's like low key the starter right now. But it really depends. Like, is D. Alford back? I think D. Alford might play outside, like start outside if he's back. Like that is what he played in the CFL, and he was very good there. For the NFL, he's like a tad undersized. I mean, he's 5'11". It's not like he's tiny or anything. So
he played the preseason as well.
Yeah. So I mean, he's capable of doing it. I think that's probably who they would go to if he's healthy. If he's not, it seems like it'll be Cornell Armstrong again. Mike Ford is there. And then, I mean, they're going to elevate these other practice squad guys. So unless they sign someone else, that's basically what we're looking at. Some combination of like Armstrong, Dylan Mabin, Matt Hankins getting elevated and being the depth guys. But
what's Lady Ray Wilson up to these days?
Right. Yeah. Hashtag free
that.
Bleedy, Nico. That's what he said. Hashtag free Bleedy. Yeah.
I think he's a free agent right now.
He is.
Yeah, we should bring him back.
Denard or Darquise Denard, right? We should go get him.
What's Dante Robinson up to? Yeah, let's get him.
Let's make some calls. Richard Sherman, right?
No, how much is Amazon paying Richard Sherman?
Yeah,
I'm sure we can match that.
Get him up off the mat here. So, yeah, it's a dark place. We'll see if they bring in anyone else. But yeah, at this point, it's not looking great. It's not looking great. Next up, we got Moonstar asking us, would be good to hear a quick synopsis on how some of our young players are doing so far this year. Also, no need to waste time on Jalen Mayfield. Okay. Yes, Jalen Mayfield's on IR, so that one's easy. I'll open the floor first if anybody wants to talk about any specific players that they've liked watching this year of the young guys. But yeah, Dave, if you want to take it from here.
I definitely want to be pro Ebiketie because I think that he's been great for the most part this year. I think he's one of those guys that like he's so close to putting it all together. He's come really, really close to getting a few sacks, and then people would really be buzzing about him. But unfortunately, when you get close, you impact plays, but you don't get the sack. Maybe you don't stand out quite the same way. But I think him and D'Angelo Malone, who has played really well in limited opportunities, have me feeling really good about the future of this pass rushing group off the edge. So I think it's been a good rookie class overall. But to me, notwithstanding London and Anderson, who are also playing well, those are the impressive guys.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely echo those sentiments. Auden, on any young guys that you've got takes on?
Oh yeah, no, Dave kind of took all the rookies, so thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Honestly, I shouldn't be mad that I normally do that too whenever I go first, but yeah, D'Angelo Malone had a sack yesterday. Ebiketie looks good. I feel like I think Ebiketie obviously has the star potential on this team. Malone was great at Western Kentucky, and I feel like he'll be a very competent and very useful rotational pass rusher. Troy Anderson has really stuck out to me, especially in punt coverage. Yeah. I remember against the Niners, he had one. I think Ray McLeod.
Yeah, he had that saving tackle. Yeah, it was Ray. Yeah,
and he pretty much matched Ray McLeod, who's one of the faster guys in the NFL, step for step, took him down, and he legitimately, I think, saved a touchdown. I think that's one of those plays that you will not see in the box score, but it just shows you just what they see in Troy Anderson and what they saw in him to make him a second round pick. He has all of the tools you could hope for. And I think with this coaching staff, Anderson can become, I think his ceiling is just limitless, given what he can become, given how fast he is, given just how instinctive he seems to be around the ball. And obviously, all of these guys are rookies. All of these guys are taking their lumps. So, we shouldn't be overly critical on any of them. But yeah, the draft class, it has it has good early returns so far. Drake London is showing out whenever the team does pass enough to showcase him. And I know Drake London fantasy owners are also losing their minds right now, but what can you do? It's not his fault. That's it's just the way Atlanta's offense is right now. Richie Grant, this is pretty much his de facto rookie year because he didn't really play much last year, but he's looked great other than slipping on that Tyler Boyd touchdown yesterday to start the game off, which wasn't great, but
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, I feel like he was probably getting cooked no matter what. I think the fall, sort of made it a little bit more oh, he fell. But I feel like based on what I saw, it looked like he was about to get cooked either way.
Well, between you and me, if I'm getting cooked, I'm tripping on my own.
I'm falling, yep. It's oops. Oh,
no. I can't believe how slippery that dry turf was.
It's crazy. Yeah, shouldn't have had that popcorn on my feet,
Yeah.
Very greasy out there. But yeah, I mean, I think almost all of the young guys. I think the one that I will say something negative about is probably Ade Ogundiji. I think he's had a very disappointing season. Considering I think he finished quite strong last year. It looked like he was becoming that run stuffing specialist that you wanted. As a pass rusher, he was never a guy that I think had a high ceiling as a pass rusher, but you need those base package guys to fill out your rotation to be a real thumper against the run, especially if we start to see more teams, start to lean on the run. And he's basically been a liability every time he's been out there. So that's disappointing. He's still a young player. I don't think people should give up on him or anything, but I think it's clearly time, and I think that's part of the reason we're seeing Malone more, that sort of thing. So I think we need to get Malone out there more. I think Ebiketie obviously is the starter now. And, Taquan Graham, I think, has been a real nice surprise. I feel like if they had Eddie Goldman and Vincent Taylor in this group, this would actually we'd be wow, this is not a bad defensive line. This is actually okay. But no, Eddie Goldman retires, Vincent Taylor goes on IR, and now it's well, they've got Grady Jarrett and they've got Taquan Graham, and at least they have Taquan Graham. Abdullah Anderson, I don't actually know how old he is, so I don't know if he's a young player. I don't think he's that old.
7-ish.
Yeah,
something
but
like
he's something. I think he is a solid rotational nose tackle that's giving them something. So I think that's valuable. I think you probably keep him around. But again, not a needle mover, but a necessary guy you have to help you each and every week stay competitive. If they had Jordan Davis, you would want, Abdullah Anderson to be the guy that rotates in for Jordan Davis and the defense doesn't fall off a cliff, sort of that sort of situation. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest bright spots about this team, and they've managed to find contributors just sort of from very, very limited resources outside of the draft. D. Alford is one I think that we're going to look back on over the course of this year and going forward as wow, they found a starter as an undrafted guy. I think D. Alford needs to keep getting more snaps. I think he's had his struggles, but I mean, this is a CFL corner coming to the NFL and basically had to start in the slot and play against a lot of really talented players to start the season. And I think he's held his own. So I think you got something there, and I think you like how these young guys are playing a lot at this point. So
I think I love that Terry Fontenot was really willing to go right back to the well after going for Delvin Breaux in New Orleans and having that not work out. He was let's go get another CFL corner. It's going to be better this time. I feel like some guys would get burned by that and not try it again. But I think Alford is proving that it's the right course of action.
Mhm.
Let's go get more Canadians.
Always could use more Canadians, eh?
See?
It's and even if D'Alfred's just like your number 4 corner for his career, like you didn't spend anything on him. You went out and got him as basically the equivalent of an undrafted free agent. So I mean that's nice. I do like that. All right, moving on to the next topic of discussion here. We've got let's see, we got Nico asking, based on what you've seen so far, would you pay Caleb McGarry this offseason? Adnan, we let Dave go first and take all the great rookies, so you can give the first take on Caleb McGarry.
Oh, God, I don't know. Honestly, like this is one of those where had you asked me before the season, I'm like, all right, this is his last year. Like, absolutely not. But he has looked good this year. I'm just really worried because, you know, we were burned by Sam Baker having an incredible contract year and then, you know, not having an incredible anything else after that. But I feel like I would lean toward yes, just given the fact that there will be a lot of cap space next offseason. You're not really hurting for cash. And also, if you can keep McGarry and if he can continue playing well, he's looked good this year. Like he's legitimately taken that step forward. And, you know, as someone who's criticized him a lot coming into the season and before, I think deservedly so. I'm giving him his props for sure. I'm giving him his flowers for the way he's looked thus far. It's huge if this regime doesn't have to worry about finding a tackle, because we were listing it out before the season. Like, you want to have as few needs as possible because coming into the season, we were like, all right, what are they going to need next off season? What are they going to need moving forward? And we were like, maybe 3 offensive linemen, you know, a center, a guard, and a tackle in addition to the needs, you know, on defense. That's a lot. You know, that's a lot for one off season, for even 2 off seasons. But so far the team looks like it may have its right tackle, you know, of the future, even the way that McGarry's looked. And they I think that they want that to be true because it's huge. It's expensive, getting a tackle, getting a competent, good tackle. You're not going to find a really good right tackle in the late rounds of the draft. You're going to have to spend a premium draft pick on one. Um, Center may also possibly be solved given how, you know, how good the offensive line has looked as a unit. I would still be more comfortable if they went out and got at least one offensive lineman, you know, as an upgrade, moving forward. But I think right now I would lean toward yes. I would pay Caleb McGarry.
Okay, yeah, that's a very valid take. Dave, I'm interested in your thoughts on that as well because I think you could make an argument both ways, honestly.
Yeah, I'd probably give him the money. I think it's going to depend on, you know, what he wants for a contract and what he does the rest of the year. But I don't feel like this team is necessarily settled at left guard. You know, Elijah Wilkinson's played pretty well. They have Schaefer, they have Mayfield. So, you know, they do have some options to work with. Same thing with center, Dahlman and Hennessy. But like, I don't feel like those are set positions. And if I am the Falcons and I want to ensure that I have a good year next year, which I think they're going to be pretty hell bent on, I probably don't want to have to blow up 3 positions on my offensive line and introduce a ton of risk there. And right tackle is the position where they don't have a ready-made starter, where they'd have to go, you know, either spend a lot of money to get somebody who's an upgrade on McGarry, or, you know, roll the dice on an early round pick and hope that guy is ready to produce right away and doesn't, you know, single-handedly ruin the offense, which we've seen happen with other teams. So to me, I would give him his money, assuming that, you know, nothing goes horribly wrong between now and the end of the year. Like let's bring back a guy that seems to be improving, has a baseline level of play that is fairly solid, and, you know, worry about maybe getting a big upgrade on the interior where you need it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'll take the other side just for some variety here. I think that giving him, it depends on what he wants. I think that's obviously a big thing. Like I think if he's asking for like 15 million or more a year, like you can't pay him that. But that's what tackles are getting. Like I mean, that's what tackles are getting. I wouldn't do it, but like that's what tackles are getting right now. Um we've talked about tagging him. The issue with that is that the franchise tag for offensive line next year is projected to be like 17.6 million. So that's a lot, obviously. But maybe for the Falcons it doesn't matter because they have plenty of money. So it's like they tag him and they just see if something else materializes, they can always rescind the tag or whatever. But that seems difficult. I mean, to me, it's like I would be wanting more from right tackle. I don't think McGarry is good enough to be like we have it settled. I think he's really become a much more reliable and quality run blocker, but the pass protection is still not good. It's just not good enough. Now maybe he will continue to improve. It hasn't been nearly as like dire as it has been. Like I think he's like a relatively average pass blocker this year. In years past, it's been a lot worse than that. And he's been just a much better run blocker. So like maybe he continues to improve. It depends on what he's asking for, certainly. But it's a tough call. I guess I like some of the other options in free agency better. Like you look at Jack Conklin from the Browns, and these are all high priced options, but like Jack Conklin from the Browns was formerly with Tennessee, right? So you could see that being a potential reunion. There's some other guys out there that you like. I've always been a big fan of Jawan Taylor, who seems to finally be having a good season for the Jaguars. He's just 26. There's names that Mike McGlinchey will be a free agent. He's had to deal with injuries. Elgton Jenkins is like sort of the big name, but
I also wouldn't be opposed to using the tag. Saying that McGarry's worth 17 million next year, but I think it's unless if you're not planning on signing another high-priced right tackle, and if budget is an issue for right tackle, and it very well might be, given the fact that even though this team has a lot of money to work with next offseason, there's plenty of stuff that they'll want to do in free agency. Like, that they may want to get a big name pass rusher, for example. They may want, we talked about possibly spending money on a big name guard like McGlinchey. I wouldn't mind rolling the dice even with the injury history. I wouldn't mind rolling the dice just because of how talented he is. And given the fact that if you are looking at budget, like long term, you'll probably have to spend a first or second rounder on a tackle. And if the team doesn't want to do that, if the team doesn't think that there's any tackles worth that kind of pick, or if they're not worth the opportunity cost of passing up on someone else, for example, then they may want to punt that position into the following offseason in 2024, and then possibly use a first or second rounder in that draft. Now, I don't know how strong the 2024 draft class will be when it comes to offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Or how strong it is versus the 2023 draft class, but all options are on the table, and I don't think that I would be against them punting it toward next year and trusting that McGarry will probably have another good year next year in what would be a de facto second contract season next off season, and possibly you wait to see if he'll improve. But I think if they do that, I would be more against giving him a contract extension next offseason versus this offseason on the long term, just because of the age. He'll be next year will be his age 28 season. The year after that will be his age 29 season. I think that plays a part into it. But the players union all those decades ago foolishly agreed to a franchise tag that gives teams a lot of leverage, and I'm never opposed to the Falcons using that leverage if they think that that's the best long-term strategy.
Yeah, I could see them doing something a little gamey that I'm sure McGarry will hate, which is they tag him to keep him through free agency. They see what shakes out in the draft, or they see if they can get another free agent, and then they rescind it if they get something they like, and if they don't, get it, then they stick with it for the year. But it's tough to say. But I do like the. I think honestly, like if you look at the free agent offensive line group, the tackles are by far the best. Like the center group looks disastrously bad. The guard group is like meh. The tackles has a lot of guys, and the more names the better, because they're going to get snatched up very quickly. A lot of them are going to get re-signed. And I think you look at this list of guys with like, we mentioned it, like Jawan Taylor is an option, and, Orlando Brown's technically a free agent. Terrence Steele's going to be an RFA. Caleb McGarry is a name in this list. We mentioned McGlinchey, Elton Jenkins, Jack Conklin. Like, right now, if I had to guess, like what they'll do is it would be like a 2-year deal for like Jack Conklin, who like sort of had his contract adjusted by the Browns this year, like adjusted down. So I don't know that they're ready to commit to him long term. I think he'll be like 29 in 2023, but like you get Jack Conklin in here for a couple years. At probably like 10 million per, which isn't necessarily cheap, but it's not backbreaking. And then you go out and you draft a tackle, because lo and behold, this is a class with a lot of good tackles in it. Like right now, I think in the top like 20 picks, we'll say the first round right now, I think there's like 5 tackles right now on Draft Network that are listed as like first round talents. We got a Georgia boy at the top, right? Broderick Jones. I'm sure you're familiar, Adnan. Jalen Duncan from Maryland. We got Skoronsky, Peter Skoronsky, who I've been a big fan of for the Falcons. He can play all 5 spots also on the offensive line. And then Paris Johnson Jr. from Ohio State are all listed in the top 32. And if the Falcons are picking in like that 10 to 20 range, I think they will have at least one of these guys like available to them. So I do feel like that could be a potential pick. Yeah.
And I think the point of keeping McGarry or tagging him would be to free themselves up in that first round to go with another position. I think obviously if you decide against spend, because we always expect free agents to make a certain amount, and I feel like they always make a lot more, just because when it comes to that bidding process, and when it comes to so many teams wanting them, it's supply and demand, obviously basic economics. If they can't come to terms with a free agent tackle, then I think you kind of tie yourself to having to take a tackle in the first round, which I wouldn't be against. Certainly, it wouldn't be the sexiest pick. I'm sure fans would not really like it. I don't think many fans ever really like it when a team takes an offensive lineman in the first round, just because it's like, they're not the stars. They're not like, the guys.
They're not sexy,
Yeah. Like I remember the fan base was just, there's that famous video of the Falcons draft party at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, just like in disarray. The fans in disarray after the Falcons took Chris Lindstrom in the first round. And I mean, so far that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the Falcons decide that they want to go with a free agent tackle, I wouldn't be against that at all. Maybe someone that you can even play at right tackle for a few years, and then maybe even transition over to left tackle, or keep a right tackle long term and take a left tackle in a few years when Jake Matthews starts slowing down. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of options, and this isn't a question that we or the team has to answer right now. They have the luxury of having the entire rest of the season to evaluate Caleb McGarry's performance, and I think that they'll take it to the last game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they don't have to rush to a decision or anything like that. I think I mean, things can change a lot between now and the draft too. Like right now, the tackle class looks really strong in the draft and in free agency, but everything could change, right? Because guys could get released, guys could get tagged and signed, like other players could declare or not declare for the NFL. Like a lot of stuff can happen. I will say there are some interesting centers in this draft class as well. Another Georgia Bulldog. So that who is it? Cedric, I think Van Pran or whatever is the center for Georgia. I think he's someone that's starting to generate some buzz. And then here's another guy from Minnesota who has maybe the most offensive line name that I've ever seen, John Michael Schmitz. I feel like that screams offensive line to me. I don't know about you guys, but that's a man that I would put on the offensive line without hesitation. So John Michael Schmitz. Yeah. So, but yeah, we got a lot of time to get through the draft takes, but that is one of the more interesting, I think, decisions, which is they're going to invest a lot in the trenches. I think this is going to be like the trench year coming up. And it just like right now, I think it's sort of like on defense right now, the interior defensive line class looks better in free agency. And like right now, the offensive tackle class looks better in free agency. So it's like you wonder if like they go for like an edge rusher in the draft and like a interior offensive lineman in the draft, and they like sign a tackle and sign a defensive tackle. So they sign the tackles and they draft the other guys. So
we're getting Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, well, all they got to do is put, like I said, they just got to put wide receiver in front of his name, and then we're cooking. Arthur Smith can't resist. So
we'll deploy him as a blocker.
Well, I'm sure he'd be very talented at that as well, Adnan said. But yeah, they have to start investing a lot in the trenches. I mean, it's not like they haven't. It's just like the first round picks haven't come yet.
Yeah, no, I would love that. And I think Arthur Smith is the type who would completely endorse that. And also Terry Fontenot, like the reason for the Saints having as much success as they did toward the end of the Drew Brees era, and Fontenot was there, obviously, this is why I'm mentioning them, is because they were so good in the trenches. Like they had maybe a top 3 offensive line toward the twilight of Brees's career. After that Ramczyk draft, their O-line was really stout. Then their defensive line, their front 7 was, they shut down the run, they got after the quarterback. And I mean, no matter what, I've always said it, I'm always going to say it, no matter how much the game moves toward being a passing league, aerial attacks, the analytics movement, I think football will always be won in the trenches. I think that's just the nature of how the sport is played. If you can't protect the quarterback, if you can't get after the quarterback, then I think that it's a fool's errand. At that point, you can have all the skill position guys you want, you can have all the great corners you want, but at the end of the day, it has always been, and it will always be, sort of a big man's league. And those guys are the unsung heroes, but they will always, I think, other than the quarterback, they'll always be the most important players on the field.
Yeah.
On both sides.
I think so. All right, let's get to one more here before we sign off. Thanks everyone for the questions. I think we sort of answered your question, Dustin Black, about the biggest needs on both sides of the football. So we're talking about the offensive and defensive lines. I think that's sort of the most. And I think you could argue also that maybe quarterback is also there if Ritter isn't.
If Dave will just let them start.
Yeah, Jesus, Dave. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's for your own good. Okay?
It is. Yeah. We have to suffer before we can succeed. But let's get to one more here. We got another Dustin question. What percentage chance would you guys give the Falcons to make it to the postseason as it stands right now? So the team is at 3-4 going into the, quote unquote easy stretch. Dave, what's your percentage chance you think they actually end up in the postseason when the dust clears?
I'll say 40%.
That's pretty
That's
good.
because I am too scared to say higher than that, because I feel like I'll ruin them, and people will come back to the show and be like, of course, Dave said they were going to the playoffs, so they didn't. Dave sucks.
Yeah.
Because this is pretty typical. But I think they've got a respectable chance. I am a little bit concerned that the Bengals, while being a uniquely bad matchup for them, have given teams sort of a blueprint to beating this current version of the team with their injuries at cornerback, with their unwillingness or inability to pass their way out of situations. So we'll have to see how that plays out, but fairly easy schedule, good ground game, defense that's opportunistic enough on its best day to punish teams, win close games, and the division is a mess.
Yeah.
Tom Brady should have actually retired. We should have the Taskmaster in Tampa Bay stinking it up, but since we don't, this is more fun. So I really think, I'm not gonna say that they're good enough to make it outright, but given the situation they're in, given how far along they are in their rebuild versus where we thought they'd be, they do have a chance of making it. So I will put it at 40%.
That's fair. Yeah, Adnan, where are you at? You think about that as right? What are you feeling?
I think it's 50-50.
Okay.
And honestly, I have had you told me that I would be saying 7 weeks in that this team would have a 50% chance of making the playoffs, I'd be like, what the fuck happened, in those first 7 weeks? Um, but just given the schedule looks far easier right now than it did at the beginning of the season, on paper when it first came out. And I think that that's just the nature of the NFL. Um, some teams are a lot better than you expect. Some teams are worse than you expect. I think on average, there's always on average 6 out of 12, or back when there were 12 playoff teams, it was always on average 6 out of 12 playoff teams were new, who hadn't made it the year before. And, so much changes in this league. So, that's very understandable that the schedule is different, but the schedule looks very undaunting overall. Like, this team just had their hardest 3-game stretch, in my opinion, of the season, and they did what they needed to do. They won one of those games, and I think they won one of. I think you would have rather they beaten the 49ers or the Bucks as opposed to beating the Bengals and losing the other 2 games, because the other 2 games are interconference. But I'm looking at the schedule and I see only 2 games on it where I would say that, yeah, that's most likely a loss. I wouldn't even consider picking the Falcons in those games, and that's the games against the Chargers and the Ravens. And even the Chargers, like, their run defenses looked pretty suspect overall.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pick. I'm not going to pick against Justin Herbert in that game, especially
They
given
did. They probably will be down Mike Williams for that game, according to reports today.
a high ankle sprain. So,
Yep.
but also the Chargers are coming off their bye week, which
The Falcons are getting what, like 3 or 4 teams coming off their bye week this year or something. I remember that stat.
the Chargers and the Saints, I think, are the only ones.
Okay, that's not bad. That's
Yeah,
not as bad as I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember doing that rest advantage schedule, and even the Saints one kind of gets counteracted because the Falcons will also be coming off their bye week.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at the schedule, like, you have the Panthers twice coming up, and I know those division games are always tricky. They're never straightforward. But the Panthers just look so. I know they just beat the Bucks, but they just look so untalented on offense overall. And it's a huge break that Christian McCaffrey's off their team before we even played them. The Bears look terrible overall.
Yeah.
The Commanders look terrible overall. I know they just beat the Packers, but overall they haven't looked very good. The Steelers look like they can be had. The Saints, we know their struggles. Even the Cardinals later on in the season haven't looked. The Cardinals aren't.
The Call of Duty just came out, so
Yeah, Call of Duty just came out, so Kyler Murray's screwed.
yeah.
Yeah, like, even that Cardinals game and the last Bucks game of the season, both home games, I would have put those down as auto losses before the season started. But now, given what we've seen from those teams, I wouldn't say so. And just the division has looked so bad. Like, the Buccaneers look absolutely exposed right now. They don't look as good as they have been. The Saints look terrible. The Panthers look terrible. Like, the Falcons could legitimately host a playoff game this season, which would be an insane proposition, had you told me that after Brady announced that he wouldn't retire. And, the team just plays so hard, and, they have a legitimate identity, which they haven't had the past few years. And I think at the very least that's something. I don't know if Mariota's going to make it all the way as the starting quarterback. I'm still sticking to my prediction that, Ritter will take over at some point. I think after that second Panthers game still. I've been saying it all year. But I would give this team a puncher's chance, and even more so than that, I would give this team the chance of a coin flip.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. For the record, 538's projections say the Falcons have a 33% chance based on the mathematics right now, with a 25% chance of winning the division. So by that logic, most of their chances of making the playoffs rest on their ability to win the division, according to these projections. But, they're 18th, I think, in playoff chances right now, and 14 teams make the playoffs. So they're not very far out of that, they're expected to make it tier. So they are notably far ahead of the Saints and Panthers, who both have numbers in the low teens in terms of making the playoffs. So very interesting numbers. But yeah, we got a long way to go. This was a tough game. I really don't think it should alter your opinion on the team very much. I think we need to, like, if they lose to the Panthers, then I think we can all say, okay, this team's a fraud and all that. Like, then we can start the pitchforks again. But give them a chance to rebound against Carolina, to get a dub, get back to 500, and then we'll take it from there.
I'm just saying, and I told myself I wouldn't do this before the season started. Both those games, the Panthers are bad. The Panthers are a bad football team, objectively.
Yes.
I would say that at this point, given what we've seen, I know it's a division game, so stuff can be thrown out. But I would say objectively, the Falcons should be favorites in both of those games against the Panthers.
They're 6-point favorites right now against Carolina.
Yeah. How different is this conversation? How different will this conversation possibly be? Even with the loss to the Chargers, how different will the numbers be, and how different will people's perception be if this team beats the Panthers both times, and if they're sitting here at 5-5 with games against the Bears, Commanders, and Steelers coming up, still having to have their bye week, and suddenly at 2-2 in the division, and probably at the very least having a share for the division lead, because I don't think the Bucs are beating the Ravens. How different is our perception at that point? Maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll come back to this conversation, but I just think that's the prediction can be so fickle based on a week to week. And I think if you had asked people after the 49ers game, they would have told you, oh yeah, like this team's making the playoffs. They just beat the 49ers. Whereas now after that Bengals game, I think it's they look pretty bad against a superior team that I think that they were always going to lose against. But what was our fan snapshot, Dave? I think there was like over a 90% like confidence in the team after the win.
Yeah, it's crazy. That high. I should have known seeing fans that confident meant a giant L was coming, because that's not allowed. Like, we cannot have that level of confidence.
We cannot be happy like that.
Yeah, no, that's not okay.
Was it like 97, 98%? Yeah. Like,
it was crazy.
Something like that.
Yes, as someone who has handled those surveys in the past, sometimes they have like 100 people respond, and sometimes they have like 20. So it may just be 20 very, very excited Falcons fans, or it could have been like hundreds of very excited Falcons fans. It does vary from week to week. If you guys signed up, make sure you respond to make sure we get those big numbers.
To say that. No, that's very like there's a very scientific method to it, and
yes.
Well, we survey hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes, it's all Falcons fans do respond to this poll. So no,
I'm just saying people's perceptions on a week to week basis change, very quickly and very drastically. And if this team wins 2 straight division games in the next 3 weeks, then I think the national perception will be, yeah, this team has a very, very good chance of making the playoffs. Whereas that might not be the case right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Well, guys, excellent work answering some great questions. Thank you to Dustin, Nico, everyone else for your questions tonight. Really appreciate it. I promise we'll give you more heads up for the next one. I just really wanted to make sure we got this done in October, so you guys didn't go too long without getting a Q&A, because we really enjoy them, and I know you guys enjoy them too. So I wanted to make sure we got this out for you guys. Before we sign off, if you're not a patron and you missed this show live and you wanted to see it live, very easy to fix that. Just go to patreon.com/falcoholic live, sign up. All tiers get access to the Q&A. So we appreciate all your support there. Thank you so much, guys. Do like and subscribe if you're watching the recording. If you're listening to the audio, leave a 5-star review. Shout out to like the 70 people who have reviewed us on Spotify now. I think we're at 4.9, so crushing it. Thanks, guys. We were at 5.0 noticeably until last week, so whoever ruined our 5-star rating, I'm going to pull like a Liam Neeson, I will find you. No, it's okay. I think 4.9 makes it more believable because like not everyone can possibly love this show. Like I get that. So
you see, guys, if it was a 5.0, Dave would have let them start Desmond Ritter this week, but
that's it. So see, because our rating fell below, that no longer we cannot have the nice things anymore. Dave takes away Desmond Ritter. So
I don't like the thought that this is going to have legs because it probably is. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of Dave, guys, he is Dave Choate at the Falcoholic himself. Dave, thank you so much for coming on. Anything you'd like to plug before we sign off?
No, just we're in our season groove. I think we have a ton of great stuff every week, previewing the matchups, trying to figure out where this team is headed. So just look for the great content and the sass from all of our talented writers, especially young Adnan over here.
Yeah, terrific stuff from Adnan as well. Noticeably, I have taken on more of the low-hanging fruit written content this year. I justify it by doing all of the recordings, but, definitely check out, my picks pieces. I believe one just came out, and, all of my corporate shill articles, which, love the corporations, love those guys big time.
It's
Definitely,
so yeah.
Definitely click those links, folks. Big time. I really appreciate that, corpos. But yeah, guys, also check out Adnan's stuff. He is at Say Which Way. Not anything in particular you'd like to let the people know about?
Just stick with the Falcoholic. I will have Fantasy Stud and Dud coming your way today or tomorrow. Dave, by the way, I submitted that.
Oh, sweet. Okay, thank you. Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. We got article submissions. All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys. Again, thank you all so much for listening. We will talk to you guys next time.
And also, we went the whole show without talking about Matt Ryan today.
You're right. No one asked about it. I think everyone's just depressed. But I think it's a good Wednesday show topic because I think we really need it to be live for that discussion to give Matt Ryan his due. It's a very sad day for the Matt. Well, we got the Mariota Mommies. I don't know what the Matt Ryan stands should be called because there's not really a good, we need like a good nickname for like Ritter stands and like Matt Ryan stands. So
I think Ritter Riders is where we're going to go with that.
I like
one.
that. Yeah. Ritter's Rough Riders.
Yeah.
Or something. We'll workshop that.
Yeah, we definitely will because I'm sure there's a problem there. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, we got to be careful with that. So guys, again, thank you for tuning in. We will talk to you guys next time. Next live show will be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. Thanks again so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a great day.